Welcome to Blackbird episode number 80. My name is James, and this is the second Sunday live stream. Today, my guest is another Chicagoite, Jon Hartmann. Jon, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. So I've got the YouTube stream going in the background because I'm a complete amateur. I'm going to mute that because I was hearing myself 10 seconds ago. Cool. So, good morning, first of all. This is a weekend morning, so we're both probably a little groggy from whatever we were doing last night. Thanks for getting up for me.
Hey, no problem. I got kids, so there's no such thing as 10:30. I'm wide awake by now.
Oh, good, man. Yeah, I'm kind of a night owl, man. I was up past midnight last night. Actually, I've been up past midnight. It seems like every night for the last couple of weeks at least, because I know, like, I've been playing Wordle. Have you heard of Wordle?
Yeah.
I've been playing that, and are you playing?
I kind of checked it out for a couple days, and I was like, this can be very addicting. I'm going to stop right now.
Yeah, that is absolutely the situation I'm in right now. I've been playing it, and as soon as the clock hits like 12:02 or whatever, I just refresh the tab because I just always keep it open and play that day's words. So that's how I know I've been up past midnight. Awesome. Well, and I said another Chicagoite. LB, of course, was my guest last week, and he is also from there. And actually, I think you said that you and LB have actually never met in person, right?
No, yeah. I think months ago we kind of said that we should together, and it just hasn't happened yet. But I mean, we're so close. It's got to happen.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just a few hours away, so if it doesn't happen, before the summer or so, I'm gonna come down there and force a little meetup between those of us in sort of this community, whatever we want to call it, the post-libertarian moment, or just whatever it is. So you and I thought that we had met in like the Tom Woods Facebook group, which is I obviously I love Tom Woods and I love his group, but it is full of pretty much normie sort of buttoned up libertarians. But as it turns out, you actually were in the part of the problem group. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally right.
Okay.
I remember seeing you in there, but I don't think we ever. I mean, we barely interacted. I think
Yeah. If we did, we might have butt heads. Were you? I wish I could remember like what it was like, what I was like pre-pandemic. Like, it's so weird that my sort of outlook and worldview have changed so much, and I can't remember what it was like. It's almost like when I moved from the anti-war left into this more kind of Ron Paul libertarian thing. I can't even make the left's arguments for him anymore. I just don't remember what I was thinking back then, which is probably a flaw, to be honest.
I mean, it could be. Yeah.
What do you remember sort of what your evolution has been over the last few years?
Over the last few years, yeah. So
or forever, I don't know.
I could tell you forever, actually. I grew up in Chicago,
yeah, let's do it.
Like a blue collar working class family. You don't you're a Democrat just because everybody is. And my grandfather was a Teamster. My dad works for a city. All of us are in the trades. I'm a plumber, and we all, you're just kind of born into blue dog Democrat, machine Democrat, and for the longest time, I didn't really pay attention to the politics. Like when I was growing up, in high school I did. I was in high school when September 11th happened. I think I was a sophomore, maybe. Yeah, I think a sophomore. And I remember kind of really starting to pay attention. Like, oh shit, there's a world outside of my world, Yeah. And I started paying attention, and I was kind of more like anti-war left as well. And I started paying attention to, you know, just all the lies that were being told and everything. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here, you know. And that's kind of what got the ball rolling for me. But then as I started getting older, I started noticing like, well, I'm not really like the rest of these people. You know, there's things that I believe that like I can't say out loud to them, you know. And then it was actually probably about a year after, or maybe not even a full year after I got married, my wife, we were in the kitchen once. I'll never forget it. We're in the kitchen and we were eating or getting ready to eat dinner, and she tells me, she's like, "Will you just admit you're a Republican already?" And I was like, "I'm not a Republican." You know, that I took offense to that. I'm like, "It's bullshit. Like, how can you say such a thing to me?" You know. But then I that night when she went to bed, like I went on the internet and I'm like, what is a Republican? You know, because
Yeah.
I knew what the caricature of it was, but I didn't know what it really was, you know, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm a Republican. You know, this whole time, like that's what I am. I'm a Republican that believes in not having wars, which is kind of weird, but you know, um, I tried to run for state rep here in Illinois on the Republican ticket back in 2012. That's when I like really hit, you know, politics hard,
Mm.
um, like really hard. You know, I was going to like all the events. I was at, you know, at the time Bruce Rauner was running for governor in Illinois. I was going to all the events that him and all his, you know, at the time when it was the primary, I was going in and, you know, speaking at all the same stuff that he was. I met a lot of people in the Illinois Republican Party and that kind of thing. You know, I go to like, I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Medved. Have you ever
I've heard the name.
heard of
Yeah.
him? Yeah, he's, you know, one of those, he's like a Dennis Prager, you know, kind of, you know, I went to all kinds of events with them. And, you know, I started like butting heads with them because like there were so many things that I was more left leaning on.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm clearly not a Republican either. You know, I'm like, what the hell am I? And then by chance, I started listening to Dave Smith, who's part of the problem. I heard him
Mm.
on, I think, Bobby Kelly's podcast, or it might have been Lewis on Bobby Kelly's podcast. But anyway, it went like from you know, one podcast to the next to ending up at part of the problem, you know. And I was like, yeah, this is what it is. This is what I've been looking for, you know. But then I had problems with things like the nap, and you know, other aspects, and I'm like, well, this isn't really it either, you know. So like
Mm.
I wouldn't I wouldn't ever have considered, like I would tell people that I was a libertarian just because it was easier to say that than, you know, try to explain everything that I was. Um, but I never really like felt like I was like a full-fledged libertarian, if you can even define such a thing. And
Yeah.
then, oh,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Go ahead. Keep going. Good.
You know, and then as time went on, I'm like, you know, I kind of feel like I can take from everyone. Like I like this, I like that, I
Sure.
like this. You know what? I'm more of like an issues kind of person now than really anything else. Like I won't put a label on myself anymore. It's stupid to me. You know, I mean, even when, you know, I'm not. People don't realize that I'm in like the group with like all the post libertarians. You know, I guess I identify more with them than anything, but I wouldn't even call myself a post libertarian because there's things that I disagree with them on as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and you know, like LB is always kind of harping on, it's not the post-libertarian is more like a movement or more of a moment than a movement. There's not really like a cohesive philosophy there. I think it's just sort of an identification that libertarianism, while maybe philosophically complete, is practically unworkable. Um, just because there's so few people who share the sort of values of liberty. When you say liberty to one person, they're going to think like, oh yeah, if I have the liberty to go to the hospital and have to pay for it, that would be great, you know. Um, and then you tell them, well, we don't want universal health care. They think of us as monsters or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think it's just a recognition of that kind of sort of human trait to want free stuff, or at least what they think is free.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're always, no matter what it is, you're always trying to travel the path of least resistance. You
Mhm.
know, and I think with a lot of people, when they hear free this, free that, that's the path of least resistance, you know. And But it's not. And then that goes into like the time preference type stuff, where it's like, yes, it is right now, but it's not always going to be. And it might not be, it might be the path of least resistance now for you, but it might not be for your kids or even later in your life. But it's trying to explain that to people and be like, hey, you know what? How about you light a fire under your ass and take care of yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
I think my problem is like I understand that there's people that can't take care of themselves. So I think that was one of the things that I never went like full blown ANCAP, because like what do they do?
Mhm.
Maybe government things is a good thing for them, but not in the current way that it is.
Start a charity, bro.
Well, yeah, you can, but then you have all kinds of
Yeah.
problems even with that.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you kind of grew up in like generations of blue collar families. I'm sort of the opposite. My dad was a business executive. He was sort of a self-made business executive, but like my grandfather on my mom's side also owned a business. Another sort of self-made guy, but still, like I wasn't exposed to blue collar lifestyles.
Mm.
I've never, I don't think I ever met a union member until I was an adult, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's completely different. So like when I see these trucker protests, for instance, in Canada, my first instinct is like, this is never going to work. I mean, Trudeau's going to start locking people up before he admits that, they're right. Um, what do you think of that? Because our mutual friend Tommy Salmons came back with, no, man, these are truckers. They'll get locked up before they start acquiescing to the government's demands. And sure, I mean, we've got Tommy, and we've got Reed, and we've got Gord, who I love, and who's actually on the ground there. But that's just three people. I mean, what's your beat on this kind of thing, where these sort of manly men are actually standing up and getting political rather than just keeping their nose to the ground and doing their jobs?
Well, I see utility in both.
Mm.
You have to like, if we're in a society that's functioning right now, so like I wouldn't fault anybody for putting their head down and doing what they have to do, not only for themselves but just to keep the ball rolling in society. But I think there's more utility right now in the convoy and in people expressing it, because if you're noticing, it seems like it's more and more people that are like, standing out on the street corners and, lining the streets, cheering these guys on. So it's not just the truckers, but it took the truckers to get those people out there, because up until this point, you have all these people that are like kind of quietly amongst themselves being like, yeah, this is bullshit. Or like, you have a group over here that wants to do something, but no one's doing anything. And a lot of times it only takes that one kind of situation where you're like, okay, there's enough people here now, I can do it. I mean, this is what happens with everything, right? Most people don't think for themselves, or they do, but they don't want to suffer the consequences, so they pretend like they don't. And I think with the truckers, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing them actually putting in the work to do the thing that everybody else wants to do, and it's giving everybody more courage to at least stand out there and cheer them on. I don't know if it'll work though. I think I honestly, I don't know if it'll work. I don't know which way it's going to turn. I hope it's going to turn positively. uh, I mean, no one's covering it. The media's not covering it. I mean, I don't know if like you asked the average normie here, like in the States, if they even know what the hell's going on up there. And if they do, how much, what talking points are they going to parrot at you as a result? So I don't know that like it's going to be, this big like freedom, cry for freedom that everyone thinks it is, but I sure hope it is.
We've been talking about it in the Minnesota family group chat that I'm in. My Texas family, like my biological family, they haven't talked about it. They're talking about a Trump rally that's happening in Houston, which is completely irrelevant right now. But my Minnesota family, like my partner's family, basically, they're all over it, which is really cool. At least some people are it's slipping through the cracks to some people. I saw a news article this morning though, from the Toronto Star, I think, talking about how they defaced a statue. Which, oh my God, imagine protesters defacing a statue.
Yeah.
But they didn't even deface it. They like put a Canadian flag around the statue's neck like a cape, and put a hat on his head and stuff like that. Like they didn't tag it or anything like that.
Right.
So I mean, the Canadian media anyway is reporting it, but of course they're reporting it from their angle.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, the Canadian media. I have a VPN that I generally connect to servers in Canada because crypto trading is a little bit looser up there. But so Twitter always thinks I'm in Canada, and their media throughout COVID and everything has just been awful. They're just a propaganda arm. I mean, like they don't even hide it. There was another news article this past week talking about how the truckers were protesting road conditions in British Columbia. Like that's what the purpose of this convoy was.
Yeah, that's
insane.
Ridiculous. That's completely that's like 100% propaganda.
Like,
yeah, let's just misinform the shit out of people so that they don't come and watch our heads roll, you know.
So switching gears real quick, I noticed behind you, and I'm highlighting my own camera, which is another amateur thing. You have this artwork in your background. I'm not sure if that's your actual wall behind you or if it's like a virtual background, but talk about that for a little bit.
Okay, so yeah, no, this is an actual wall, and this is all my art that I've been painting over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. It's kind of a new medium for me. I've always done this kind of stuff. I don't know even what you would call it. I call it abstract or eclectic art. What it is just like this one behind me right here, the red one. That's actually, it was cool because, I don't know, did you watch that episode of Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan recently?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay,
although
so there's
did
a
he
part.
show up in a tuxedo?
Yeah, just stupid,
does he address why the hell he's wearing a tuxedo? That's so weird to me.
Nope.
I've only seen memes.
Just put a tuxedo on and talk to Joe Rogan for 4.5 hours.
Well,
but in that conversation, he referred to Mircea Eliade, who wrote a lot about like the history of religions, and he wrote a book called Shamanism, and Jordan kind of talked about that, and that's actually what this is. It's a shaman that's being initiated by the spirits of old shamans. I don't know if you want me to go into like detail or anything, but essentially,
absolutely, I want you to go into detail. We've got another hour, so.
Oh, cool. So this is like,
let's get as detailed as possible. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. So.
Oh, cool. So this right here is like the spirit shaman, or the main spirit that's going to be initiating this guy today. And you can see like it's kind of like a bone mask. You see these two things right here are the eyes. You have like a nose kind of thing. There's another mask down here. So it's like this guy may or may not have several faces. And then over here you have the initiate, which is, you can see his face is all complete. And then over here, it's the same initiate on the other side here, and his face is all distorted and cut up. And the shaman is holding both heads, in his hands like this. Now, what that is in all the different shamanic traditions, there's stories of, the process of being initiated into shamanism. And I'm using that term loosely because shamanism really is specific to like Siberia and that region. But whether it's a medicine man, shaman, however you want to call it, witch doctor, they all have this theme where all around the world, where the spirits take you in ecstatic state, however you get there, and they cut you up into pieces, and they remove bones, and they take things out of you, and when they put you back together, they put the different things that would make you magical or be able to deal with certain things. Like I think the Aborigines, like they'll actually put stones. The theory goes that they'll put stones inside your body that help you magically. So that's what this is. It's and it's kind of like a death and rebirth that's in a lot of religions. So you have the guy is going in complete, he's getting tore up down here, you know, cut up and changed. And then if you look down at the bottom here, him, you know, more, he is now a shaman, and he's orchestrating it all, which is really cool because it's kind of like a circular type thing. Yes, the shaman spirits of the ancestors are initiating you, but you're allowing them to be there, and that's kind of what that is right there. And then there's other faces down here that are also spirits, you know, ancestor spirits right there, and then right there. That's one of my more recent ones that I started. Aside from that, I mean, that's basic. Go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at the painting on your Instagram, which is Seven Finger Studio, and it looks like those are animals to me. Is that intentional, or are they more like masks? Or
Are you talking about up top here?
all three sort of the distinct faces in the sort of totem looking thing.
So like in the center here?
Yeah, the center, the big white face. The bottom one reminded me of an owl.
The bottom one, yeah, that's kind of what I was, you know, going for a little bit. You know, the thing is, this is gonna sound crazy. When I do my art, like I don't plan on anything. I just my hand starts moving, and I start, you know, seeing things, and be like, okay, that's what this is. That's what that is. And then as I'm going, you know, if I notice something, then I kind of try to direct it a little bit, but I never start off, you know, completely like, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, it's more like, you know, let my body and mind tell me what I'm going to do, you know, without me really, like my unconscious thinking about it. So, I mean, yeah, this is kind of like, I don't know if it's like a dragon, this big center one here. Mm-hmm. It's like some kind of dragon, or, you know, whatever. You can see it's got like 4 horns on the top. It's got like these tusk looking things down at the bottom here. I can't tell you what kind of animal it is, or, you know, if it's some kind of fictional creature or whatever. But I mean, a lot of this stuff I just want, you know, to be open to interpretation, is, you know, to an extent, you know, because this one does have a story. I just don't know it completely.
Cool. What's your like step-by-step process for painting look like?
Pretty much what I do is I grab a canvas, I turn it whichever way I think it needs to be, and then I grab either a pencil or like an acrylic marker, and I just start making shapes, you know, or dots. Like I've been doing this kind of stuff over here lately. Yeah, you know, these are all just circles that you know, and even with these ones, I just go on like, oh, that kind of looks like this one right here. Looked like a chihuahua farting to me. So I painted it that way, and then
I saw it as a monkey with diarrhea.
It could be that too, you know. It's like, you know, that one was like kind of, you know, not as like philosophical or anything like that. That was just kind of more of a fun thing, and that happens sometimes too, you know. But all of them, like this one here, that's actually, you're familiar with the Bible. That's the story of Golgotha.
Yeah, of course. It's Golgotha, exactly.
You know, I did have the intention to do that one, because I unintentionally made Golgotha over here at the bottom of this one.
Oh, cool, yeah.
I didn't do that on purpose. That was the complete, you know, I was just working on it, and I'm like, holy shit, that's 3 crosses. That's Golgotha. Mm-hmm. So then as I was working, I actually was finishing this one while I started working on this one.
Yeah, the intentional Golgotha kind of looks like like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, is sort of the light shining from the cross up to the heavens, and then the mercy flowing out of the heavens onto the cross.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's actually a really good way of looking at it. My way of looking at it is kind of reversed, but it's basically the same thing. I mean, if you remember in Golgotha, there were Jesus was crucified next to 2 criminals, two thieves.
Yeah.
And the one basically told Jesus to go fuck himself, and that guy ended up going to hell. And then the other one, you know, repented and said, you know, I I want you to save me. And he went up to heaven with Jesus,
Mm.
is kind of what that is. But I mean, the way that you said it, it works just as well that way too,
Yeah.
But that's what
Yeah,
art
I got
is,
my I got my Jesus quotes mixed up, but yeah, that's basically what I was driving at.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really cool stuff. So audio only listeners, I'm gonna put screenshots or pictures of these paintings in the show notes at blackbirdpodcast.com. But I do encourage you to at least watch this segment on the video, whether on YouTube or Odyssey, once it's live, because it's good stuff.
Thanks.
So you said you've been painting for like 6 months. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less. So like all the stuff that I do, like specifically the shapes, like this, like the shaman one and that kind of thing. I've been doing that since high school, just on paper and with like markers, or sometimes there'd be no color.
Sure.
But with the pandemic, I started kind of, not being able to do a lot of things. So I just started picking up all kinds of stuff to like teach myself and to, teach my kids, and then also to just pass the time. So I was like, why don't I just start doing this on canvas, with paint? And so far I'm really, really liking it, but I have some other ones that I actually carved on plywood that are similar to this and that I painted and everything. But yeah, so it's not that like this is a brand new thing to me, but this is the as far as the medium is concerned, it's fairly new.
That's cool. What kind of paint do you use?
It's just acrylic. I think the one behind me right here, that's watercolor, which was a mistake, because I was such a noob as far as like painting goes, and I didn't like research anything. I thought I grabbed acrylic, and like as I was working at it, I'm like, this feels different than the paint that I got before. Then I looked, I'm like, oh, it's fucking watercolor. I mean, I still like it. It turned out pretty good, but
Yeah. A happy mistake, as
Yeah.
Bob Ross would say. Awesome. Well, so do you consider art like a meditative practice for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm really big into psychology and mythology and mindfulness and all that kind of thing. So it's definitely, I look at these like, I don't know how familiar you are with Carl Jung, but he talks a lot about Mandalas and like making like your subconscious through art, and it kind of dictates like you can look at things and be like, oh, okay, this is what this is. This is why I'm feeling this way, and this is a picture of it. That's kind of what it is for me. So yes, it is like a meditation type thing, but there's a little more to it. It's like when people like record their dreams or something, and then they sit there and they look at their dreams for like what the meaning in the dreams are. So I kind of look at my art like that too. Like what is my subconscious trying to tell me or show me, but that is definitely a form of meditation. It's contemplative meditation.
You mentioned to me that you've kind of been in the like meditation or mindfulness kind of movement, I guess, for years, right?
Yeah, probably since I was about 13 or 14. Like
Wow.
I
Okay.
really started like listening. Well, at the time there was no podcasts or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I really, I would go to like all the used bookstores I knew in the neighborhood, and I would just grab a book and read it and then move on to the next one. And it's started slowly kind of going from like I didn't know what I was interested in to like, oh, I saw this part, and like this part of this book talked about this thing, so now I want to learn about that. And then I went and I got all the books that I could think, I could find about that interested me, because there were some that, sometimes titles don't really grab you, even though it's a subject you're interested in. It's like, yeah, this, I'll read it if I have to, but this one sounds more interesting, so I'll do that. And I just kind of started work my way through a lot of like the Eastern philosophy and the mindfulness and that kind of thing, with different levels of understanding,
Sure.
from when I was a kid until now. But yeah.
Who were some of the people you would read when you were like 13? That to me, I mean, Great Gatsby and Catcher in the Rye was like what I was reading back then, and I considered that like deep. Oh man, Holden Caulfield, he calls everybody a phony. That's so deep. I mean, that to me was like fine literature and stuff that I could learn from. But I mean, it really turned me kind of into a jaded nihilist for a while. What were some of the things that you were reading?
One of the earliest books I picked up was the Book of the Five Rings by I can't remember his name. It's Musashi. Let me see what his name is. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart. Yeah, it's Miyamoto Musashi. It's Book of the Five Rings, and it's he was like a swordsman, like supposedly undefeated and like the best swordsman of his time, and he was also like a kind of a philosopher, and that was like kind of one of the first books that I read where I was like, yeah, I like this. You know, it talks about like the nature of things, and how to use the nature of things to your benefit. And if you don't, you're gonna basically have a really hard time. Which then got me into like the Tao Te Ching. I'm really big into the Tao Te Ching. I think that's something that everybody should read. And actually, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people don't really give that book its due, but it's actually sold. The only book in the history of books that has sold more than the Tao Te Ching is the Bible. That's how important it is.
I've always been kind of intrigued by Taoism, but I've never actually read the Tao Te Ching. Would you consider yourself a Taoist? I know you're kind of averse to labels like that, but
not particular. I mean, you know, it's hard because I appreciate it so much. I wouldn't be upset if I called myself that or if someone else did, you know, but I wouldn't call myself a Taoist, you know, because as far as like, it's not, it's something that I use. It's something that I try to live by, but I don't fully, you know, like sometimes I think I'm better than nature. No, you know, even though this is what it's telling me to do, I'm going to do the opposite, you know. But I mean, that's what that would be whatever any religion you're in, you know, there's no perfect specimen is in regards to religions.
were you
So,
raised in a religious family?
oh yeah, big time. I was brought up Catholic.
Yeah.
My dad's uncle was a priest. My dad's aunt was a nun. I was an altar server in Catholic church, and we used to have mass at my grandparents' house a lot of times, like because my
Celebrated
grandparents,
by your uncle.
yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
one of my either me or one of my cousins would be like the altar servers. I mean, we would have legitimate mass at my grandparents' house, Catholic mass at my grandparents' house. Not all the time, you know, but enough to, you know, have it kind of be like a thing that we did. But we all went to church and everything. I'm like super. I know right now there's like this whole, you know, Orthodox or Catholicism type thing,
Yeah.
which, you know, I'm not getting into that one. But I was born and raised Catholic, and I still consider myself Catholic, even though I don't really go to church or anything like that.
Yeah, me too. I think Catholicism is almost like Judaism, where it's like a indelible part of your identity rather than necessarily the religion that you believe in.
Yeah, especially if you grew up in it. You know, like I
Mhm.
mean, if you grew up in a Catholic church, like really grew up in it, not just like going to church every Sunday, like you can't take that away from you ever, you
Yeah.
know. And like I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it's mostly good.
Well, and my fondest memories from my kind of childhood and teenage years are of youth group at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Plano, Texas. I mean, I would drive a half hour or more every week when there was a church right down the street from me, to hang out at the youth group and,
That's
go to
awesome.
mass. I was never an altar server, but I was a Eucharistic minister when I was in high school. I went to a Catholic high school
Hmm.
and got which, come to find out, I guess Eucharistic ministers is something that like should never have happened anyway. But or girl altar boys, which I guess, I mean, that's sort of from the more conservative branches of Catholicism, but um once they did start letting girls become altar servers, it seems like things like vocations and stuff like that kind of went downhill. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's sort of inside baseball politics that we don't need to get into.
Fair enough.
I'd love to talk more about meditation though. Do you have like a daily practice?
Yeah. So in the morning, when I wake up, I come down where I'm at right now. I call this my workshop. It's my basement. And I start the day with, I have like a daily New Testament devotional that breaks up. It's like the New Testament in a year, basically, and every day has. So I read that, which I know probably you're thinking like, well, that's just prayer, but that's meditation is prayer, if you use it that way. So then I do that. I read that. I'll take my notes. Sometimes there's a verse I really like, so I have a notebook that I write it down in. I also write my dreams down after that. Sometimes I'll do my dreams first because the longer you're awake, the less you remember. So I'll write my dreams out, and then I'll read the daily devotional, and then I sit there and I contemplate, for 10, 15 minutes, however long I feel necessary. Sometimes it's longer. Just what it is that I'm trying to accomplish for the day, and what kind of energy I want to give to people that I encounter. And then that kind of puts me in a good mood to just sit there and not think of anything, and just let my thoughts wander and then think of whatever it is that comes in, kind of see it floating by, and then, put it down when it's gone, and then just keep going like that, Of course, this is also while breathing, just in and out slowly. Yeah, that's pretty much my routine in the morning.
But you're also a plumber, which to my like, I don't know, white collar upbringing, that seems surprising. But challenging that, obviously, someone who's going to the office all day doesn't really have time for contemplation. They're living like in the future almost, rather than in the moment. Working with your hands like you do really does kind of force you to live like right now. Do you see a connection between your spiritual practices and your career?
Well, I can tell you I didn't want to be a plumber. I didn't grow up being like, I'm going to be a plumber when I grow up, but I think because of the type of mind that I have, I can use it together. So yes, I mean, like there's times where, if I'm laying under a sink and there's water dripping and it's hitting me in the face, in my eyes, and my hands are all wet and I can't hold my tools, tight enough to get, I mean, yeah, you need to be of a certain mind frame for you to be successful in that scenario, especially. Whether or not that would be like part of my spirituality or like induced by it, I don't know. I think I think the answer would be yes, but not really intentionally. It's just kind of what arises in that situation. It's either you get frustrated and have a hard time with everything, or you kind of submit to it, be uncomfortable, and use that uncomfortability to move yourself forward.
Cool. So what are some like, I don't know, like I've recently come to the conclusion that I am politically on the right. I've always up until, I mean, I was still saying not left but right, not left not right but libertarian, well into 2020. And I still think that there's such thing as a left libertarian, but I don't know. I would now like admit to myself that I am on the right. Have you like noticed anything like that in yourself in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think when my wife told me that I was a Republican,
Yeah.
I kind of,
Well, when was
I
that?
never,
Was that
that
recent?
was, no, that was 2011.
Yeah,
I
because you ran
believe.
for office in 2012.
Yeah. So, I mean, since then, I kind of always felt like I was on the right, but I still didn't want to admit it. I mean, growing up in, where I grew up and around the people that I grew up, like it's not something that you can really talk about, or that you can even find other. I mean, there's a lot more right leaning people in Chicago than you would imagine. Obviously, not as much as left leaning, but to say that they're non-existent is just incorrect. But I think over the last couple years, like I'm getting more familiar. I'm getting not familiar. That's the wrong word. I'm getting more comfortable with calling myself that,
Sure.
and it's funny because I feel like at no other time in my life since I was considering myself on the right would there be more consequence for being comfortable with that thing, So it's kind of like my wife is not conservative, like at all. Um, she's not on the right. I mean, I think there could be some issues where she would be more right leaning, but definitely
Sure.
she's more left leaning.
Is she like woke though, or is she more like
I guess I would say I wouldn't consider her woke, but she's like the things that she's like way more to the left on me than me. She's not a dick about it. Like
yeah,
there's just like, I think that really has a lot to do with, the problem that we've been having here lately is like, not me and my wife. I'm just talking about like people in
Mm,
general, is that like, um, if you're a dick about whatever it is that you're trying to do, you might as well just not even do it, you know? So there's that. I think that as far as being comfortable with it goes, like I'm happy to say that now, because I feel, especially now, I feel like more and more people are like, you know what? I don't know what I am, but that ain't it. I'm not this authoritarian, tyrannical, government loving type person. And I think the reasonable people are starting to kind of realize that like being right wing is not being a right wing extremist, or like the caricature of what that would look like.
right.
And that so I'm again more comfortable with it, but I'm still kind of like teetering on like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that to certain people, in certain settings.
Um. So yeah, I mean, I guess like, are your dad and grandpa, if if they're still around, are they are they still voting Democrat? Like, I don't know.
No,
It seems like
no, my
it
dad's
seems to me
not.
like
My
he's
dad's
not.
not. My grandfather died when I was 7. So, but he was. I'm almost positive he was a closet Republican.
Sure,
Because I found like I like Ike buttons and stuff like that in his in his belongings.
it's funny.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like they're legit, like old school, whatever. But my dad, like, I think my dad's always got my back, regardless of what it is that I'm doing. I used to sing in a band. He would go to all my concerts. Wherever I played, he'd be there.
Mm.
I played basketball in high school. My dad was always there. Every game that I had, my dad was there. All through grammar school, all through high school, all my basketball games. When I started running for the state rep thing. My dad was still considering himself a Democrat, and he was still standing on the street corners, getting people to sign my petition to put me on the ballot. You
That's
know,
cool.
um, so like but my point in saying all that is like he started realizing the stuff that I was telling him wasn't just bullshit. Like he
Mm.
started seeing, like, because he, again, this is generation. My kids, I have 2 kids. They're the 7th generation in the city of Chicago in my family on my dad's side. Like
Wow.
we've been in Chicago forever. And even my dad grew up not knowing whether or not what the difference between a Democrat and a Republican was, just that we
Sure.
had to be Democrats. So this goes
Well,
like
and
way,
the difference between a Democrat and a Republican kind of varies. I mean, varies from year to year and from place to place as well. I mean, I grew up in Dallas, and Democrats in Dallas and Republicans in Dallas are way different from Democrats in Chicago and Democrats and Republicans in Chicago.
oh yeah. I think, I think to be honest with you, the Republicans in Chicago are a lot more extreme
Mhm.
then they're willing to show, behind closed doors. Like, and I don't mean extreme, like, white supremacist, overthrow the government extreme per se. But like behind closed doors, like they say all the things that you would be happy with as being a
Mhm.
right winger. It's when they're out in public that they don't. And this is the same problem that like the LP had, during the 2020 election. They were trying to they were trying to, cater to people that didn't fucking care about them and never would care about them.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
We were talking about the differences between Democrats and
Oh,
Republicans and your dad specifically.
yeah. So my dad, the more I think he voted for Trump the first time, but then you have to look at it too. Like a lot of the working class people, if not, they see themselves getting pushed out.
Mhm.
They see themselves not mattering. And I'm talking about working class people that are, in unions specifically. Like the unions, like they're like teetering on the being full blown woke, and a lot of them are already. Like the teachers union
Yeah.
in Chicago, like there's no difference between them and any other like extreme left wing, um, organization. And but there's a lot of people that, like you said, with the definitions, like that's not what it was to them. And they're slowly, like the older people or the people that are like our age that think like we do are slowly getting eked out of the system. And this is obviously a way for the unions to control the people, and then by doing that, they're the government, they're putting the people they want in office, through union dues and everything. Because like if you look, the demographics are changing dramatically in a lot of the unions. And I'm not saying that to be, one is better than the other. It's just true. A lot of like it seems like a lot of like the middle class, like white people are either becoming poor and like out of that atmosphere, or they're going more towards like the white collar, be like coding or like, whatever
Sure.
else they're doing. And as a result, like a lot of the people that are now going into the unions are, what would be considered minor. I don't even know if minorities is a correct term to say anymore. But like that they're, it's a lot of like the like black and Latino kind of people that are kind of filling the gaps.
Mhm.
And they're being told that everything is out to get them, so now it's just like one like vicious circle where now they think they have the power, and I guess technically they do, to like really dictate the way that they want the kids to be taught or that they want the city to be ran. And it's just kind of, I don't know, at this point I feel like it's falling apart.
Is that trend carrying over from the teachers unions to the like plumbing and Teamsters and stuff like that, or is it still pretty much relegated to? I mean, education has always been the a left wing industry, and by left wing I mean culturally left, not just
Sure.
economically left.
I think it's slowly getting to other trades. I still think it's kind of like a company to company, union to union basis. But I mean, it's heading there. There's a lot of people, uh, like before, like okay, so I've been a plumber. I've been in the plumbing industry for 18 years, and when I first started, it was like, you know, a lot of Polish people, like legit off the boat Polish people. Not very many Latin people, a couple black guys, and it was like, but now it's getting more towards, um, just a big group of like everybody, and some of that has to do with, or and some of that brings along with itself like the like woke kind of ideology. So I wouldn't say that the union itself is like at the top, but they definitely going to be in the next, I would say, decade.
So I guess it's my sort of understanding that the woke ideology, and we keep using the word woke, and
Yeah.
that's not the best word for it, but
No.
whatever. There's not really a better word for it at the moment. So I guess that does make it the best word definitional. Anyway, it's my understanding, and like I don't know, man. I'm gay. I have a lot of trans friends. So like I'm kind of in that world, but like the folks that I hang out with, like while yeah, they are woke, they're not like the leaders. They're not the ones who are creating this ideology. And most of them have their disagreements with it. Um, so I do wonder, like, given that woke ideology is pretty much driven by, you know, white women in academia, some black women as well, and especially, you know, in the sort of news media industry. I do wonder if at some point the like plumbers, for instance, like black plumbers will say like, no, this is a little bit too much. Like, yeah, we would love to make the same amount of money as white people. And fair enough. I mean, you know, the income disparities among the races is actually real.
Yeah.
Income disparities among the genders is really not, but but it it feels like at some point normal people in the various demographic groups will start to see the disparities that this ideology creates, and then the pendulum will start to swing back. Are you in the same like sort of optimistic outlook there, or would you say that no, these people are actually being brainwashed and believing it?
I think it already is swinging back the other way.
Oh,
But
cool.
but I do also think that people are being brainwashed just to a lesser
Yeah.
extent. You know,
Yeah.
I think that the more you ostracize everyone, you know, like you at first you're like including everyone, right? You want everyone to like you want everyone to like gang up on the whatever the enemy is,
Mm.
right? And then as you start getting people and you start gaining, you know, gaining momentum, now you can start throwing people off your own wagon,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what we're seeing right now, I think. And I think that either people are getting thrown off the wagons or they're jumping off themselves because they're like, this ain't what I signed up
Yeah.
for, you know. So I think that's a good thing, you know. I think where I differ from a lot of like the post libertarians is like I'm not like I'm willing to look at the other side and see the utility in some of it, you know. Like I don't think that, you know, that like it's the whole like progressives driving the speed limit thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not changing as much as you think you are, and you're especially not going to change things as fast as you think you're going to, right? So you have to try to work your way around what you already have, and they're not doing that. You know, nobody's really doing that in my estimation, except for the left. You know, they're doing that really well. So we need to like kind of figure out where our battles are and try to win the small ones. And I think we start with um, like the stuff that I do with like meditation. And I have a YouTube channel, but I kind of locked it down right now because I'm trying to rebrand and everything. But I'm talking about like meditation, and I'm talking about getting yourself right. You know, and I think that's where we need to start. You know, changing all like the institutions and everything is great, and I think that we should do that. I think it could be done on a scale that would make most people happy. But I think the number one thing we need to focus on is getting people to be right with themselves on an
Yeah.
individual level, you know, because I have this problem where like, oh, we just need everyone to think the same and be the same. Okay, well, how do you do that? You know, and people have their ideas, but my idea is get everybody that can get them to be able to put themselves in a mind frame where they can take care of themselves and where they can take care of other people,
Yeah.
and don't just like it's kind of like, and that's why like you know, Matt Erickson and those guys, that's why like I do I don't mind being with them because
Mhm.
I mean that's what the whole wealth, power, and influence
Mhm.
thing is.
Yeah,
No, but
exactly.
in
And
order
it's also Jordan Peterson's like first rule. I mean, It's, you know, put your house in perfect order before you change the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the Bible too, if I'm not mistaken. You know, where you have to have you have to clean the inside of the vessel before keeping the outside of the vessel clean means anything.
Yeah.
You know, I probably butchered that, and I don't know what verse it is, but I know it's in there. But yeah, that's what
we're
it
Catholic.
is.
We're Catholics. We don't know the verses. We just know
No.
it's there.
Right. But that's the thing, is like, that's what I like about them. The wealth, power, and influence type thing is a good thing, but what comes before the wealth, power, and influence? The mind frame to get yourself there. You know, and that's why I study the meditation, and that's why I talk to people about that kind of stuff, because that's how you do it. You know, and especially in a secular type culture. That's the other thing. Like I consider myself Catholic, even though I don't go to church, like I told you before. But we have to, you know, right now everybody's like, oh, we need to like talk about Jesus. We need to be Orthodox. We need to be Catholic. We need to be whatever. It's like, yeah, I don't disagree with you, but you have to understand that not everybody's there, and not everybody, not everybody's going to see it that way right away, and some people will never see it that way. But I feel like if you get people thinking a certain way about themselves, that will be the natural progression. But just harping on it, you know, it's like the evangelicals. Like there's no difference right now to me, and I know I'm going to probably piss off a lot of my friends for saying this, but you know, the Orthodox right now and how evangelical they became about it is no different than the evangelical Christians that turned a lot of people away.
Yeah.
It turns a lot of people off, I should say, not away. And I don't necessarily think that it's wrong to talk about it, but, and I understand for like scripture reasons why, you know, that should be the forefront of your, you know, kind of talking points or whatever, but I don't think it's the right way to go about this day and age, this society that we're in.
That's kind of been a big difference that I've seen between Matt Erickson and Cyprian, is that Matt, in his sort of conversion to orthodoxy, has been much more like, whoa, look at this shit I'm discovering. This is insane. Like it's almost like an awestruck, an awe reaction. Whereas Cyprian Vinarmani, who I used to follow, my God, I mean, like, my partner would make fun of me for how much I talked about Vin Armani and how like just profound I found everything he said.
Me
But
too.
like when he started going through the catechumenate, he started beating everybody over the head with the like, how can you possibly still believe what you've always believed? Look at all this stuff that these people are saying. But the thing is, like, he wouldn't even say, look at all this stuff that these people are saying. It was more like, look at all this stuff that I'm saying, and I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm always right, and I can predict the future and all that stuff. Like just it's very, very unattractive to people,
exactly.
Especially to people like me who don't like being told what to do.
Well, I think that's pretty much everybody in the libertarian camp.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care what side, you know, right, left, center, libertarian. I mean, I think that's why we all kind of gravitated towards that, because we don't like being told what to do. You know, I think one I don't want to talk shit, but Matt Erickson, when he talks about this shit, is genuine.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Cyprian is all the time. You know, and that might be wrong of me, and it's definitely not a knock on him, but it's the feeling I get because of the way that he carries himself.
And just to be fair, I mean, that's exactly it. That's his personality. I mean, if you've watched Gigolos and know what he was up to in like the pickup artist community and stuff like that, like putting on a show and persuading people that way through his charisma is how Vin Armani and now Cyprian, because it's the same person, different name, but whatever.
Yeah.
That's how he operates. And there are still people who are persuaded by that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, he's just after a different audience than you and me, I think.
Right. I got his book
you know,
sitting on my bookshelf right here. Like
yeah.
I was the same way. Like when he was taught, there was I can't remember. It's been so long ago. He had that series where he was talking about like all this stuff. I think it was like maybe 2017. I can't think of the name.
It was 2017. It's called the Ascendant series, and I liked that so much that I downloaded the YouTube videos in case they ever like got dropped off or anything like that, so that I could like watch it. And I've got just pages and pages and pages of notes on it. Like it's and you know, that is probably the biggest contribution he's made to my life and my way of seeing the world. I bring it up all the time, that cyclical view of history that he's describing there. I mean, I bring it up on like every other episode of this podcast, and now it's every 2 episodes in a row that it's been brought up because it's just, yeah. Actually, I think that he's been mentioned more often than any other person on this show, which is so crazy. Because I mean, like, you know, we could be talking about Dave Smith or Tom Woods or whatever, but you know, I mean, he really does. He is a unique thinker. His book, the most recent book is Render Unto Caesar. It's so good. Like, holy shit. Like, I mean, I read it in one sitting. I remember I was sitting in a Mexican restaurant and I'm sitting there just like drinking and eating chips and salsa and reading this book and just getting struck by every single chapter. It's so good. But then you see him on Twitter or whatever. Right. It's like, oh my God, this guy wrote that. Like, So yeah. Anyway,
talking about Christianity and leaving out the humility part.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I mean, that I guess that is a knock. I can't say it's not, but you know, I mean it.
He's not listening anyway.
Well, even if he does, like, I mean it because I like the guy. I love him. I love listening to him talk. You know, it's just when he gets like the arrogant side of it is like where I kind of like, you know, tune out. Yeah. I don't know. Right, and I think, go ahead.
Well, sort of his downfall in my mind, I guess, also for me has been personal because right after he was on the show, he kind of wrote a hit piece, not a hit piece, but like just a piece kind of slamming me in counter markets. And like, he didn't name me, but it was clearly about me. It was right after he was on the show. And like, I don't know. I mean, it's tough to not take that kind of thing personal, you know? I mean, yeah, I was a baby agorist and I'm not an agorist anymore, but you don't have to like write an article about somebody who's brand new in your way of thinking that you've been, you know, part of for years and years. Yeah. I mean, would he talk shit about someone who's like brand new in orthodoxy? Maybe he would. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. You know, like he went from like, you know, drinking ayahuasca in jungles to being a fucking Orthodox Christian. Like you can't have compassion for someone that is at a certain point in their journey, which is like where you were. It was what, you know, where you were at. Like, do you have to be a dick about it?
Yeah. Well, and okay, so speaking of which, and changing subjects from Cyprian.
Yeah.
We're in a group chat with I don't know, like Adam Patrick and just a whole bunch of people kind of in that milieu, the milieu that we've been talking about all along. And we have talked at length about psychedelics, mushrooms and all that stuff. Do you have experience with that?
Yes, I do.
Talk about it. That's something that I'm super interested in, and in hearing sort of the pros and cons of it. Because like I said, like I always say, I've never done mushrooms, but I'm sort of mushroom curious, or just whatever psychedelic.
Yeah, so I've completely, like, I've evolved.
Yeah.
In some ways since I took mushrooms for the first time. I had multiple reasons for it. And I kind of have like knocked those off the checklist, you know, and now I'm kind of at the point where like I don't feel like I need to do it anymore. One of the biggest reasons was I wanted to quit smoking cigarettes. And I was hearing that you could quit smoking cigarettes, that people do quit smoking cigarettes with psilocybin therapy. And I'm like, well, that's cool, because I tried the patch, I tried the gum, I tried the lozenges, I tried like the fake shit that like you inhale, there's nothing there. Like, I've tried to quit cold turkey and none of it worked. Like, I'm like, I don't. So for me, like, I don't like to take Tylenol if I have a fucking headache. So I'm not going to go to the doctor and be like, hey, prescribe me some medication to help me quit smoking. You know, that's just not, it's not me. It's not who I am. Like, I'm not going to do that, but I will find mushrooms and try that, you know, but that's just kind of like, that's the kind of person I am. You know, it's funny because I was on No Way Jose like a while ago. I mean, it had to be like one of his first, you know, top 30 episodes.
Yeah.
And at the time, like, he asked me, we were talking about mindfulness and everything. And he asked me, like, have you tried like psychedelics, and I haven't at the time. I never did. And this was like last year. Well, no, maybe I don't know when it was, but it was within a year and a half ago, somewhere like that. And the answer was no. I haven't tried psychedelics, but I've always been interested in them. I read The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley when I was like 13 or 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, of course you did, because
And
you were reading shit like that when you were 13 or 14 years old.
and I was like blown away that like this guy could be so eloquent talking about being on a hallucinogen, you know? And I was like, I at that point I was curious, but I grew up in a family that was full of alcoholics and everything, and I was always kind of scared to try anything. Like I was sitting outside of AA meetings listening to all the horror stories that everyone had. And like I've been around drug addicts my whole life and this kind of thing. So I was always like, well, I can't do that because of what these guys said. You know, the older I got, the more I started, kind of still thinking about it, and it never went away. Like I want to try it at least once in my life, but I didn't know like, should I try DMT? Should I try acid?
Yeah.
Should I, like what? I settled upon mushrooms because it's something that grows naturally.
Right.
It's kind of like it's funny because like I have some right wing beliefs, and I am like a super fucking hippie with a lot of stuff, and like natural medicine is kind of one of them.
There's a book by Rod Dreher who's awful on everything, but he calls it Crunchy Cons. He wrote it back in the early 2000s when granola was sort of the word that you called liberals. They're just crunchy and granola hippies or whatever. But like there's a whole movement in conservatism that are exactly like them, except they have conservative beliefs rather than.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So then I started like, I'm gonna have to check that book out. Actually, I'd like to see that. So I started kind of researching like what's the best way to go about it, and like how much, and like probably all the things that you would do if you're interested in it, like reading all the websites, talking to anybody you can about it. I know you had Mike Brancatelli on here to talk to him about it. I love that guy. Like I obviously I was in the part of the problem inner circle. Like I was listening to Dave Smith when Mike was still on part of the problem is when I first started listening, or actually Jess Sager was on, I think, still on with him. But anyway, so like I really got into like, okay, I want to quit smoking. And I hear this is the best way or one of the best ways that you can do it. And so I got a hold of some and I tried it. And, to this day, I quit smoking for 6 months, cold turkey, stopped, and it's because of my experience while I was on mushrooms, solely for that reason. It's like I could go into details with you on that, but the other thing was like I want to experience, like since I'm really into meditation, I'm really into like psychology and everything. I'm in mythologies and religions and this kind of thing. I wanted to see what that side of my mind would give me while I was on mushrooms. Like I didn't want to, I wouldn't call it like a spiritual endeavor, but maybe it was, growing up how I grew up, like it's kind of hard for me to, say that it was anything, like spiritual aside from like God and Jesus kind of thing, but it really necessarily wasn't, because I feel like, especially now having done them, like I'm not, I never had a question in my mind about whether or not they were existent beings, entities, however you want to call them. And now I really know they're not, but that was one of the things, like I wanted to kind of experience what reality really is. I will say, and I wanted to clear things up too with like, certain aspects of my life that I needed clarity on. And I was, told that I could really dig deep personally and figure stuff out, on mushrooms. So there was a bunch of reasons why I wanted to, and all of those kind of came through. Now, when I first started, the first couple times I took mushrooms, I would have told you, absolutely take them. You need to. Now, I would say I would be hesitant to tell anybody to do that. And the reason is because if you're not prepared mentally, definitely don't take any kind of psychedelic. Like if you have anything that you want to work out, like things you don't like about yourself, or like if you have like traumatic shit in the past you don't like to think about, like that'll come out 100% in the forefront of your mind, and you won't be able to escape it until you deal with it however you need to deal with it in your mind. Now, I don't know if everybody's mentally strong enough to be able to handle something like that. You know, I don't even know that I am, having done it as many times as I've done it. I think I am, you know, but sometimes like I do kind of get like a sense, like a little, like I get a little freaked out sometimes, you know, where I think about like, oh shit, I thought about that when I was on mushrooms. Now I'm not on mushrooms and I'm still thinking about it, and it's still making me feel the same way, you know. I would say it's a net positive. But I think that like, I think you definitely need someone that's experienced to kind of like walk you through, or to be either someone that's experienced or someone that you care deeply about to be with you, you know, while you're doing it, so that they can kind of walk you through it and everything. The
like
first, right, the first like, I don't know, I think 6 times I took mushrooms, I did it completely by myself. And because I was sure that I could handle it, you know, and I did. But each time it got harder and harder to be by myself about it, because you just, like I said, you know, things come up whether or not you want them to, and you have to deal with them. And if you don't deal with them the way that you ought to, and with full, complete honesty with yourself, that's the other thing. Like you can't lie to yourself on mushrooms. You know, like I wanted to quit smoking, right? And basically, like I was hallucinating and I saw zombies, and they were what I realized is that they were people that died of all the various ways that you can die of smoking, cancer, you know, whatever, you know, whatever diseases you can get from smoking. And they told me that if I don't stop smoking, I will eventually be one of them. And it's so crazy to like, if you've not done it, it's hard to explain how real the hallucinations are, where you almost think that it's not real, or that it is 100% real, that it's not just a hallucination. Like I felt the coldness of them on me. You know, I felt like I could see them, like I was sitting here. Like if you were in the room with me right now, that's how I saw them. I could have reached out and touched them. You know, that's what really made me want to quit. I was like, holy shit, man, these guys, you know, but what I'm saying is I was trying to, like, you know, in my head, I'm like, I need to go smoke a cigarette right now. This is like too much stress for me. You know, like I'm fucked up. You know, I need to go smoke. And I was like, they're like, oh, you need to quit. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll quit, you know. But I knew that they knew that I wouldn't quit, you know. And it was like giving me this like severe anxiety. And I was having this party for my mom's. My mom's kind of young. My mom just turned 60. So, and I had her birthday party at my house that weekend. And I was like, okay, look, I'll quit after the party, because I don't want to like just stop right now, because if I stop right now, I'm going to be all cranky. Everyone's going to have a shit time at the party, blah, blah, blah. I'm like sitting here, whether or not they were actually sitting there with me. Like I'm sitting there, like telling them like, look, I'll quit. I really will. And I did. But they went away once they realized, when I said, okay, I'll do it after the party, that was good enough for them, because I was sincere. I meant it, and I did it. And then they went away. It's that kind of thing that I don't know, like that's kind of mild, you know, like I could see some people being afraid of that, and then other people being like, oh, that's not scary at all, you know. Until you see it yourself, then you'll know one way or another what it is for you. And that's, you know, but I mean, it's things like that. You cannot lie. You have to be 100% honest. And then all the, like, because I did have a few bad trips. I wouldn't call that one of them, but at the time it was. Like bad trips are the best trips because you actually that's what makes you be the change that you, or enact the change that you want to see in yourself.
That's what sorry, that's what the like God, I think I probably had 3 or 4 in addition to Mike. Um it, if not like this is going to be an episode about psychedelics, then at least they've come up. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what everybody says. The bad trips, so-called bad trips, are really the ones that are the most impactful. Yeah, I think for me, like, I don't know, man. I what made me quit smoking was getting into a relationship with someone who's grossed out by smoking. I mean, it was pretty much that easy. Like, I haven't. I think I've smoked a couple of times with my sister, and also Andrew would like split the cigarette with me, basically, which is probably corrupting him, but whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
but otherwise, like I'll get a craving every so often. But for me, it's like my like deepest desire is to cut the bullshit and actually follow the wealth, power, and influence kind of model, the clean your room kind of model, that just all of these people whose way of being I admire so much, Jordan Peterson and Jason Stapleton and all that. But what gives me pause is that like Mike did his pilgrimage, and immediately came back and quit his job. And I'm like, I'm terrified to quit my job. I've got debt, man. Like I
Yeah.
can't, I can't, like, this is all the stuff that is total mental blocks, but also it's like reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I quit my job today, I'm not going to be replacing my income tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I have bills to pay. So that's the kind of thing that kind of scares me about this, and probably why I'm not ready to do it. Do you
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Um, I would say whatever decisions you think that you made when you're on mushrooms, uh, give it a few days.
Mhm.
you know, because
Yeah.
because it's like once you're not tripping anymore, you're still in this like very like kind of contemplating reality, or whatever it is that you kind of work through, like it's there's like an afterglow. You're not tripping anymore, but you're still kind of in this state of mind, uh, where you're having all these kinds of thoughts about what which way you should turn. Like, okay, I learned this in through my experience, but is it something that I should really do right now, or should I plan on it? Like, should I start the ball rolling? I think for Mike, like, I don't want to speak for him, but I would assume that, like, he gave it some thought, more than it appeared. You know what I mean? Yeah, he come back and quit his job, but like, what was the process behind it? What did he learn? Like, his experience was his experience, so I can't say. I think it was a good thing for him, but like, I can't say what the actual logical aspect of it was. Maybe he saw something that he knew, like, he'd be all right. Because that's the thing. Like, you really get a sense. Like, if you have an intention before your trip, and not just do it like recreationally, I would definitely not recommend doing them recreationally. I don't think. I don't know. I've never done them recreationally, but I would think that, like, if you have a good intention prior to it, like, you'll be happy with the result. And I think you're not going to quit your job if you shouldn't quit your job.
Mhm.
It's like, you don't have that much of a control. It doesn't have that much of a control where, like, you're going to do that. I think maybe Mike was already kind of, knowing what I know about the experiences that I have, I could fathom an instance where he was already thinking about it without saying anything to anybody,
Yeah.
and then had his experience and said, yes, this is the route that I need to take. Um, so I can't tell you you're not going to quit your job, but I don't think I honestly, I don't know what your experience is. I don't
Yeah.
know what your motivations are. I don't know what your experience will be. So it's very hard for me to answer that. But I would think, the logical person that you are, um, you won't do something that drastic.
Okay, good. Well, that allays some of my fears, I guess. Not to say that I'm going to go figure out how to find shrooms tomorrow, but I don't know. I think the more conversations I have about that, the better, because it's definitely something that has been on my mind for like a year. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. So we're kind of winding it down. I did want to know. So why is your art Instagram Seven Finger Studio? What does that mean?
So what was it? 2, 3 years ago, I had an injury at work where I almost ripped off my finger.
Oh wow.
And I really started. It's good now. I can move it and bend it. I didn't lose it, but it was a bad injury where I couldn't use my hands like I normally do. It was driving me nuts because I'm always a hands-on. Like I use my hands for everything. I teach my kids how to fix things, and my whole life is with my hands.
Mhm.
And then I got to this point where I couldn't use one of them. Thankfully I'm a lefty, so it wasn't like the worst thing ever. Um, I'm talking hand-wise. I'm
Yeah.
left-handed. uh, but I was going crazy. Like I couldn't work for the moment. And I was going crazy, not being able to do stuff. So I said, you know what, fuck it. I'm just gonna start building shit. And I started I built like all kinds of planner boxes. I started doing like all this kind of art stuff. I started like teaching myself how to crochet just to get my strength back in the
Hmm.
thing. But for a while I was only using these 7 fingers. So I call it Seven Finger Studio because I had 7 fingers at the time that I started doing all this stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I love that you. So first of all, obviously, the fact that you became a plumber and also are um, borderline Taoist is probably not a coincidence. I mean, the like when you think of Taoism, the if you know anything about it, the metaphor that comes to mind is water. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just kind of the thing. So I think that's really cool. But then the focus on using your hands, like that's your Twitter bio. I use my hands to feed my family. I don't know. I just think that's really cool. Like you seem like a very kind of holistic person,
I,
just in
tr-
general.
I try to be, and I appreciate you saying so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead and plug whatever you want to plug. I tried to click one of your YouTube videos, but it says it's private. So, like you said, it's
Yeah.
private. But if you have anything to link to or anything like that,
Yeah.
let's
Sorry
do it.
about that. Like I said, I'm
No
kind of
problem.
going through a phase right now where my videos are really shitty. I could do them better.
Me too.
And
I finally figured out how to focus on your camera. So I just kind of left you as the only thing on the screen for a while I was
uh
talking and stuff. It's let's both be works in progress when it comes to video, huh?
That's my other part of my bio is always a work in progress.
Yeah, I know.
And so yeah, I mean, I pretty much am only on Twitter, and that's the at Jon_Hartmann, JON_HARTMANN. And then my Seven Fingers Studio on Instagram. I will be going back. I will be using that YouTube channel again. It's called Mind Your Business with Jon Hartmann. It's going to be talking more about like the mindfulness, meditation, maybe metaphysical type stuff. I want to give it the time that it deserves. Like I don't like to half-ass shit, and I was half-assing those videos. So I made them private because I didn't want to delete them, and I might use them in the future. I might cut them up and actually use parts of them elsewhere, uh, because the content, what I was saying was good. It was just not what it should have been, and I was, kind of at the point where I'm like, yeah, fuck that. So Mind Your Business with Jon Hartmann on YouTube will eventually be there.
So I just found it. I'll link to it. And folks should definitely hit subscribe. And when the videos start flowing, then you'll be able to watch them.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, John, thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning. I will let you get back to your family
All right.
and talk to you in one of the various and sundry ways that we're constantly talking to one another. It's
You got
been
it.
great getting to know you over the last couple of years. And I really appreciate it.
Same. You're one of
All
my
right.
favorite people on Twitter and on all the
Oh,
groups.
awesome.
And
Cool.
even at the Part of the Problem Inner Circle, you were one of my favorites.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, John. Talk to you soon.